pattern of behavior of that person or entity. These credit checks, I mean, these checks that I'm collecting, post-dated checks, does this guy have the integrity to honor checks when they are presented? We have very good information about that for Nigerians. We also have mobile check now. Okay, so for CRC, for instance, if you have an MTN line, and that MTN line is what you use to register for your BVN, if you just do *565*3#, you can get your credit report from your phone immediately. We have gone to that level as we try to develop products in the market. Impediment, BVN, unique identifier, is a major challenge we have in Nigeria. And I keep on telling everybody who wants to listen, just like Chief said, the BVN is not sufficient for us to be able to operate efficiently. We really need to have a national unique identifier. That rests in the National Identity Management Commission. We had a series of meetings with them. Let every Nigerian have a means of identification, not just those who are having, credit, who are having deposits in banks or who are having accounts in the banks. We have telcos, for instance. There are so many people who have telephone lines and they don't have any bank accounts, and we should be able to cover them. Data quality is another issue. Nigerian banks do not want to invest in resources that can help them to have very good quality data. That has potential for us not to be able to develop products, but also makes it, make them to be very good hits for legal issues, for litigation. And we've seen that, play out in some of the cases that we have. In fact, cases don't embarrass me anymore because this thing comes virtually every week. You receive all manner of threats from lawyers and so on and so forth. Cash and carry system, we think Nigeria would advance and people will become prosperous only if we migrate people to credit culture. And we now have that institution to be able to do that. I think this is where I want to stop. These are the 3 licensed credit bureaus in Nigeria. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Bola, for that very well insightful paper. He said once people have capacity to buy, it stimulates production. It calls to mind, the different interventions, the different ways, the government have tried to bring these industries to come and establish their factory in Nigeria. You can imagine what will happen if Honda, if Nissan knows that I have access to credit and we can all buy cars. They will come. They will come and set up. If they know that we can afford to buy those cars, if they know that we can afford to buy those things, they will come to Nigeria and set up. So we all agree, all the papers, all that has running through all of it is that we need credit reporting. We need a very good credit reporting for our economy to grow. And then there's something that came out during your paper. They said that information is not just based on information from banking institutions, that Unilever can send information, everybody around you, all these very well-established retailers can send information. I think that sends a very good warning to everybody to know what you're dealing with. And then the portal for return checks, it's also, all these things are things that this workshop is all about. It's all about creating awareness and for us to actually discuss. And these are things I hope will come up during the panel discussion. Let's keep all that somewhere so that during the panel discussion we can talk very well about it. And then, of course, we have gotten to a stage where everybody wants to now protect their credit history. You don't want it to get into the wrong hands. You don't want it to get into the bad shape. And this is like an aside, a joke really. On Sunday, we were discussing I teach the children church, and I was teaching them about the borrower and the lender. And I told my daughter that, okay, I was giving an example. I said, okay, you are the borrower, I'm the lender. And I came to you, and she said, please, who is the borrower? I said, the person that comes to beg for the money. She said, no, please don't use me as an example. So if a child can know the importance of credit report and know that she needs to protect her credit history, it's important that also we take it very seriously and as we move out of here. And for us to go into the next session, There are little housekeeping that we need to do. There is an second attendance list that is going to go out now. It has session 1, session 2, session 3, and session 4. Please, we want you to sign the session you partook in. If you know any session you participated in, please sign it. And this will help us to know how to help you, because if we know the session that are missed by a lot of people, we may have to have something done for you in that regard. Please, when you get this, just tick the ones that you participated in against your name. Write your name. If you did session 1, sign there, session 2, session 3, and session 4. And if you want guidance, you can look at the brochure. It has the timetable to guide you in knowing the session to sign. These forms are being passed around now. If it comes to you, please sign and tell us the ones you participated in. And we are going to have very short remarks right now from the representative from CBN, who is the regulator. And his name is Dr. Hassan Mahmoud. He's an economist and certified bank examiner. He holds a PhD in economics from the University of Surrey, United Kingdom, and he's currently the group head of macro-prudential surveillance at the CBN. He was previously the special advisor to the governor of the CBN and lead economist at the African Union Commission, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. He has over 25 years of experience in the banking sector regulation. And before he comes up, I want us to recognize the presence of the MD CEO of Credit Registry, Mrs. Jamila Sharif Ayedun. Please, a round of applause for her. She has been here since morning. Please, you're welcome. So, with another round of applause, let us welcome Dr. Hassan Mahmoud for a very short presentation.
Hello, good afternoon all. Sorry I was not having my presentation in PowerPoint, so I'm not going to be using the screen here. I'll be reading through my slides. But since I'm going to be brief, I will just go through some few things that I'd like to share with you. First and foremost, I'm going to be talking from the regulator banker's perspective, so I will not delve into the private, individual, or firm interface on credit reporting. Olatunde and Taiwo has said a lot on the credit bureau, so I will just talk more on the CRMS, which is warehouse in the central bank. And like as previously discussed and well emphasized here, I will start with the fact that while access to credit or finance has been a major challenge, particularly to high-end part of the market, the high-risk end part of the market, the management of the credit in terms of credit design, credit monitoring, credit processes, which is more or less the infrastructure, has significantly constrained the ability of the economy to conquer its credit conundrum challenge. We've all emphasized here how credit is not going to the small and medium enterprises, the individuals, the low-income earners, which are the largest driver in the coordinator's speech. I saw some statistics there where you see the SMEs accounting for almost 50%, input to the GDP growth, almost 80-something% of employment in the economy. But if you look at the proportion of credit that go to that sector of the economy, is less than 5%. Significantly, what bankers claim, and I'm happy that banks, I think banks, commercial banks and merchant banks are here. What banks claim is that that sector is a high-risk sector, and they don't have the manpower or the tools or the processes to monitor that. Yes, indeed, a regulator is supposed to provide some basic or fundamental infrastructure to facilitate that. But in some other economies, you see banks going to, developing the skills and the prowessness to address these challenges. But here, because we have other windows where you can make risk-free earnings quickly, it's rational behavior, being a profit maximization firm, for you to just go to the easiest way to do that. Where we cannot micromanage banks, so we cannot tell them, no, don't invest in treasury bills, go and invest in agriculture, go and invest in SMEs. No. But we have some, more aspiration ways of dealing with the banks, and they go to that section, though it is it's a mutually, agreed terms. So credit reporting system include a robust database of information on debtor and creditors, as well as process and administration of credit in the banking and financial sector. The CBN has implemented major structural reforms in strengthening the efficiency of the credit infrastructure in Nigeria, including the automation and centralization of the credit reporting and documentation platform. The credit data is a depository of relevant details on individuals and firms to enable the assessment of their credit worthiness, credit history, exposure level, and repayment behavior of those individuals, because that is where you can take your sound credit decision. However, I'm going to be talking of what is required for banks to monitor in our prudential guideline. The CBN manages the credit risk management system, which we call the CRMS, which is a robust regulatory credit reporting platform. So it's mandatory for you to report your credit exposures on that. And then we have a template of how you're going to do that, of all credit-related transactions in the banking industry. The credit submission and disclosure requirements for financial institutions are provided in the CBN Prudential Guideline, and this guideline is a compendium of all rules that guides the bank behavior, including the risk management, corporate governance, KYC, and AML, CFT, and loan loss provisioning requirement. I'll dwell more on the loan loss provisioning requirement. The loan loss provisioning rules provide guidance on recognition and measurement of loans, establishment of loan loss allowances and provision, credit disclosure and related matters. Now we even have IFRS 9, so expected loss, you have to also give that on that new guide. The CBN considered the provision of the Prudential Guideline as a minimum requirement. This is just at the minimum threshold. You are supposed to do higher due diligence on your own part. You are supposed to know the inherent risk of your customers or for your businesses and make adequate, provision and assessments of the credit line. This is what the examiners will look at, and will look at the, your internal control system to address the inherent risk in that. Other critical matters addressed in the Prudential Guideline include provisioning of margin facilities. After the global financial crisis, when we saw the crash in the capital market, we actually banned margin loan by banks for buying of shares or other securities, because we saw what happened in that, because the collapse of the 9 banks we found in 2009 were principally from the capital market, because the securities we're holding were just, all of them had negative capital. The underlying asset was 0 or negative. With the adoption of IFRS in 2012, we also adopted, like I said now, IFRS 9, Principle 9 now in 2018. Banks are required to make provision for loans as prescribed in the relevant IFRS standard. The IFRS provisions are compared with the provisions under the Prudential Guideline, and we have these regulatory reserves that we put in when we have the variations. And then the dynamic provision, I don't want to dwell into that now. Well, let's just go to the credit risk management system. The CBN Credit Risk Management System, CRMS, is a module in the Electronic Financial Surveillance System, the EFAS. We're already just in the EFAS now. We are uploading that on the FINA now, for those that are familiar with returns on the CBN. On the FINA software, jointly developed by the Central Bank and the NDIC. To capture and process credit information from the financial institutions, FIs, the CRMS is a credit information registry or bureau established to collect, collate, disseminate credit data on borrowers of the financial institution to support credit management decision. Now, banks are supposed to make, in short, even like Mr. Popola said, even before you approve a loan, in the process of initiating a loan, you are supposed to generate a code from the CRMS. And that CRMS, that code enables us to capture that facility that is going on. If it is approved, it is recorded on the system. The performance of those facilities are also recorded on the system. And like was also earlier mentioned, the real enhancement in the CRMS, because CRMS has been on for many years, the real enhancement in the CRMS is the unique identifier. When the BVN, even though the BVN is limited to the banking industry, but generally you cannot take a loan if you don't have a bank account. But right now, with the telco each challenge is coming in now, you can actually take a loan from your phone facilities, and that's why we've been struggling to get the authority to license telcos that want to go into payment system to use our payment system infrastructure to avoid any systemic issues coming up, or when things like that magnify to a particular level, then you start seeing challenges to financial system stability and see vulnerabilities in some lines of the action. For the bureau de change, for the credit bureau, sorry, for the credit bureau, I'm not going to talk much about that, but I just want to share a statistics with you, which is very, very interesting on the credit. This was found on the World Bank report. The World Bank findings revealed that with the introduction of credit bureau, particularly in Nigeria, small businesses reporting high financing constraints reduced from 49 to 27%, almost halved. And then the probability of obtaining a bank loan for small firms increased from 28 to 40%. So indeed, because that template is available, individuals don't have access to CRMS. Even if you have a dispute with your bank on CRMS, we don't, we just warehouse the data bank. We don't have the administrative power to amend anything on the CRMS. So if you have a dispute with your bank on a particular, somebody has rated you or bad or your credit, and you go to a bank and the bank is not giving you a facility because CRMS is showing that you have a bad debt. It could be a dispute, it could be interest that is not paid, it could be discount, disputed charges or stuff like that, but the bank records you as bad. If you come to the central bank, the best we can do is to show you the records, which bank reported to you, what facility was it. It's now on you to go back to the bank and argue that. In the event that the dispute is not resolved at that first line, then you can go to the Consumer Protection Department or go to the law court. However, we are readily available to provide those evidences to support that argument. What you can find because somebody was just asking me now, this new Credit Reporting Act that you should resolve issues within 10 days. And I was explaining that most of the issues there are just not within the purview of central bank to resolve immediately. All we do is give you the data as at when it is required and what is the information on our CRMS. If there's a ruling that that information is wrong and that judgment is passed to the bank, it must be sent to us either by the victim or by the bank, and that will be amended because that everybody is accountable to the law. Now, efforts are strengthening Nigerian credit reporting infrastructure. We have the enactment of the Credit Reporting Act of 2017. I won't talk much about that. The design of the CRMS. The CRMS process of deploying a fully redesigned CRMS to address the teething issues of lack of acceptable unique identifier for prosthetic borrowers by converting to the use of BVN and tax TIN for corporate. But another thing that is being done on the CRMS platform now is, even if you're a director in a company, or for example, a company wants to take a facility from a bank, the BVN structure is such that the bank, the firm, or the corporation will submit its TIN to the bank in assessing that credit. However, the BVN is the CRMS requires that you report you should put the BVN of all the directors of that corporation. So if in the list of the directors of that corporation that wants to borrow money, that has never borrowed money before, there is a director that is already overexposed, then that facility cannot be created under that bank, under that corporation. So we check so that we can have one person that is a director in 10 corporations. So you can decide, so by the time that guy is a director in Lever Brothers, Chelaram, Leventis, and then all these guys are highly exposed because those facilities are tied to the BVN of the director. Then you start seeing limitations to how much you can expose. So your best option is to pull out of being director of that, and then those facilities can go through. And we also have the new insider-related guidelines that we have now. Before, the insider-related guideline is just to the individual directors. Now it's to the spouses, to their children, to their house help, to their drivers, to any person that is related or corporation that's related to them. So that, broadening of that has really captured a lot of the issues that we have with these perpetual debtors that cannot be captured. We also have the proposed credit scoring system, which has also been discussed by the Credit Bureau lectures that we had earlier on. The establishment of the transaction and national collateral registry. We also have this issue, and this is, thank God there are attorneys and lawyers here. We also have this issue of banks creating credits and then not perfecting the securities that are submitted for that credit until the facility is getting bad or is going to be lost, and then you start trying to perfect it. And I know, I'm not a lawyer, but I know there are rules of you seizing somebody's land, because the land never belongs to the person in the first place anyway. And then there are some restrictions that are on that. So we've seen issues where, one, maybe the security is already overvalued, and that's what we found in the crisis we had in the petroleum, oil and gas sector recently, where facilities were going total industrial NPL now. It's about 30 to 35% of it are coming from the oil and gas sector. Why? Because the facility, when the oil prices were going up and every bank was going to the oil and gas sector giving facilities, the underlying asset that these guys were putting in as securities are like tank farms that can take 1 million liters of fuel. Meanwhile, the fuel is not there. So you can't value it with the fuel volume that is going to be in there. Or the tank farm is overvalued. Now the facility is bad, you go to the tank farm, it's not worth 500 million. And you have given out 3-4 billion naira facility on that. So all those are going to be, are also being checked now. And now even if you have your credit report from the CRMS, you have to have a supporting complementary report from the Credit Bureau before those facilities can be approved. So in conclusion, let me not go into your long. The CBN recognizes the need for a robust credit infrastructure in Nigeria to facilitate the availability and management of credit to households and firms in the economy. The bank, from a regulatory perspective, continuously improve the credit infrastructure and formulate appropriate policy options with a view to supporting adequate credit reporting requirements to mitigate credit and promote a sound and stable financial system in Nigeria. The private sector have also played a very important role, particularly in complementing the effort of the public sector and the central bank. A sound credit decision requires robust database of key statistics of the financial status of a borrower and the borrower's ability to pay back its debt as at when due. Accurate and reliable credit reporting is a critical component of an efficient credit infrastructure. The CBN sets the standards for credit reporting by banks and financial institutions and provide regulatory guidelines for sound credit appraisal and management. The full disclosure and professional ethics code provide that management and compliance officers are held accountable for irregularities and distortions in credit reporting. You know now, in the new guidelines of the central bank, while you are supposed to have chief compliance officers, there must be an ED from within the board of the bank that will also be responsible for compliance. And in the event that things are not done properly, those people as individuals are also liable to be prosecuted. So before it just is the bank is failed, and bank is a limited liability or something like that, or PLC, so it cannot be sued. Now, the people that are involved in it, the corporate governance issues now, the individuals can be prosecuted as individuals that have deviated from their codes of professional ethics in handling their activities. Improvements in credit reporting and enhancement of credit infrastructure will remain a continuous objective of the CBN, and the bank will readily collaborate with relevant stakeholders to achieve these objectives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan. You know, the regulator always brings a very nice angle to it, and indeed you have done a very good job of that this afternoon, Doctor. Thank you so much. And this would actually We thank God that CBN is here and the banks are here. And we are going to have subsequent programs, workshop on anti-money laundering, cryptocurrency, and all this are going to come very handy. So if you have not submitted your email address, make sure you submit it, because your information is going to be sent to you through your email address. Or maybe your handwriting is not so wonderful and you're sure that it's not so wonderful. You can go and make sure you use very good handwriting to write it, so that you're able to get all the information pertaining to this conference. That email address is where you're going to get all your programs. That is all where you're going to get all the presentations that have been done today. So if you're sure that your email address is good, you can leave it. You're going to get all the presentations sent to your email. And also remember that the workshop is being streamed live. So if you failed to participate in any of the sections, please, you can go online and watch them. And even right now you are here, you can use the live streaming to market yourself, to tell people that you are actually an expert in credit reporting, by clicking on the link and sharing it, so that your friends know that you are here and you are at this very important workshop. Now it is time for lunch. But before we go for lunch, we are going to be having a group photograph. We're going to be having a group photograph. It's near the foyer, just in front of the foyer. So I want everybody to move to the foyer. From there, we're going to go and have our lunch. But there's an important information that is coming out about our lunch. We're not going to have a 1 hour lunch. We're going to have a 45-minute lunch. So you may want to eat fast so that you don't miss part of the next session. Please, 45 minutes from now, we are going to be back for our 5th interactive lecture. But before we do that, please let us go towards the foyer for the picture, towards the foyer for the group photograph. The foyer is where we entered from. And if you have the list, please submit it to us. If you have the list, please submit it to us. Remember, the live streaming is www.siwagworkshop.org. siwagworkshop.org. There is no S in the workshop. Siwag Workshop, not workshops. siwagworkshop.org. Please go and click on the link. interactive session. The fifth interactive lecture will be taken by both Mr. Robert Sola and Mr. John Ukebo. And I will read the citation of Mr. John Ukebo. Please, can we settle down? We're a little bit noisy, and please, can we settle down? Let's remember the website for the online streaming. Click on it and also share it on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, so that other people can also partake of what we are doing. Yes, the website is, that's the website for the streaming. If you click on it, you can share the link on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, so that other people can be a part of it. So we're moving to the fifth interactive session, which will be taken by Mr. Sola and Mr. Ukebo. Mr. John Ukebo is a senior staff attorney at Northeast New Jersey Legal Services Incorporated in the Jersey City office, where he specializes in representing debtors in consumer financial related matters such as debt collection, credit reporting, automobile repossession, and deficiency cases. Mr. Ukebo also represents consumer debtors in Chapter 7 and 13 bankruptcy cases. Mr. Ukebo has represented tenants and homeowners in eviction and foreclosure cases. Mr. Ukebo has served as a member of the District Ethics Committee